There's an overwhelming amount of financial advice in the news and on social media. Who do you listen to? Are they looking out for what's best for you? How do you tune out the noise? In this podcast, trusted advisors Emily Agosto, CPA, and Amanda Vaught, JD, bring their extensive education and experience to delve into all aspects of personal finance. Emily and Amanda make topics like investing, taxes, and financial planning interesting and accessible. And they provide a framework to help you think through the plethora of financial advice and news out there. Are you ready to start making the best personal financial decisions for you? Welcome to Connecting the Dollars with Propel Financial Advisors.
Hello, Amanda.
Hey, Emily, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in Chicago. And whenever I'm in Chicago for even like 5 minutes, my Chicago accent resurfaces. So I feel like this is going to be a funny recording.
Yes. And if you're watching this version of our podcast on YouTube, you'll notice that Danielle Woods is also with us. And she's been on the podcast several times, bringing a wealth of knowledge, all things tax. I was going to say accounting, but I won't.
No.
Financial planning, financial advising, investment management. And if I'm looking, I keep looking to the left because Amanda's actually here in my house, but we are doing this recording today, and Danielle as well. So today, we'll get right into it. We are going to talk about the Secure Act 2.0 and specifically how it affects people more in the savings phase. If you've read at all about it, any listeners have heard or read about it at all, you know that a lot of it affects people who are retiring soon or already in retirement. So we want to focus a little bit more on the younger folks, I suppose. So Amanda, Danielle, my question for you, what are the main things that you think people in the savings phase should take from what's gone on in the Secure Act 2.0? Either one.
I always think we should start with positive.
Okay.
Because there's lots of negative. One of the positives is that there has been an increase in how much you can save into our favorite account, a Roth IRA. And they have also made some employer retirement accounts. There's an awful lot of self-employed people, us included, who need to have our own type of retirement savings account for work. And 401ks are what I call a Cadillac retirement plan. They are unaffordable and just unrealistic for a lot of small firms. So the alternative is something like a simple IRA, which is about as simple as it sounds. And they are now allowing Roth simple IRA contributions, which is a brand new thing. Again, that's a legal allowance. The reality and the actuality of that happening is still dependent on custodians like Charles Schwab and Fidelity and that to have that available. And but one of the most immediate things you can do while we're waiting for Treasury regulations is to simply increase your savings.
Yeah, and Amanda, what do you think about, sorry, I'll look at my camera, not at you. What are the things we talk about all the time on this podcast are how to save, and how do you think this all kind of fits into this new congressional act?
Yeah, I think, one thing about this new law is that it just increases the complexity of retirement savings accounts and different things you can do. And that doesn't take away from the fact that most people have a tough time savings in general. So, why do we need to make it more complicated? I don't know. We can get into that. But I think, one of the things they did was they increased the amount of catch-up contributions you can make once you turn age 50. You can contribute more to your retirement account. And there's extra catch-up contributions for those age 60 to 63, I believe. But I feel like that if you're not 50 or you're not 60, that just because the law says you can put in extra doesn't mean that should stop you from putting in extra if you are in your 30s or 40s, because that's when the savings can really help you. And, this focus on using 401k plans, which is a lot of the change, like we need to focus on putting money in the Roth that's separate from your employer. We need to focus on putting savings into taxable brokerage, despite what the law says, you can still do these things, right? So that
Yeah.
hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point, that in their attempt to make these things more available, they've really just kind of alienated people from it, because it's just getting worse and worse and worse, and they just don't know what to do. So we were listening to a webinar from another financial advisor yesterday, and I really like the way she put it. She's like, we've got to get our clients away from this mindless saving in pre-tax savings that creates huge tax issues in the future that people aren't ready for, and a lot of CPAs don't address. And unless you have a good proactive financial advisor like us at Propel, you will be completely clueless and blindsided when the time comes for you to start spending the retirement savings that you've worked so hard on, and realize that a very large chunk of it is going to taxes that you weren't expecting.
I think a lot of people get a little burned on that, right? They feel like they're doing so good, maxing out their 401k, and then it comes time to retire and they're like, wait a second. You know, the savings phase is totally different from the distribution phase.
Yeah.
It's one thing to set up a saving strategy, but as part of that saving strategy, we can incorporate the ultimate distribution strategy, which is the piece that a lot of people miss.
I think, yeah, right. There's a consequence to saving on taxes now.
Yeah.
And you need to be fully aware of that, because it can be incredibly expensive. And what Amanda just said is, I thought I'd done everything I was supposed to do. That was one of our focuses of our last webinar, because I had a client sitting down with a client, and I was like, we really need to beef up your brokerage and your Roth savings, because you've done an amazing job with your 401k, but all of that money is going to be taxable to you, to your beneficiaries. And they were so frustrated, and they said, that's what they told us to do. They said, max out your 401k, do all this work on your 401k. And they're right. For a long time, that was, what everybody recommended, until people finally started retiring and going, whoa. And keep in mind, of course, that income tax rates are very low right now. And we'll kind of talk about that later as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the strategies seem to be, the strategies have changed with savings in general. And the more you can save, the more you can get into the habit of saving at a younger age, the more likely you'll be able to take advantage of these rules that let you do catch-up contributions when you're 60, 50, whichever age that is in the act. Yeah. But something, when we were discussing what we wanted to talk about today, don't let Congress determine your savings. That's a big point we wanted to say. You have to really talk about, or think about what's good for you, and work with a financial advisor who understands the whole picture, and also recognizes that tax laws and things are going to change. So you have to kind of tune some of that out.
Yeah. We have a lot of people come to us, like new clients will say, I had somebody for years and years and years, and when I finally started worrying about, I want to retire in 5 years, what is this going to look like tax wise? And they would just say, you need to talk to your tax preparer.
Right. So
all that time that they had been saving with this person, taxes had never been an issue. It had never been a part of the plan. And that's negligent in our perspective. And I think if there is another positive in this increased complexity that we're getting from Congress, is it shines a really bright light on the people who know what they're doing with their clients and those who don't. And none of us is ever going to be perfect. And these, like we said, these changes are happening on an annual basis. So we can only make decisions and recommendations based on what we know. But if you don't even try to be proactive, you're almost definitely going to get burned.
Yeah, I think that gets to one of the points about us being a fiduciary firm compared to another firm that's not, because we have to do what's best for our clients. If it means taking withdrawal out of your account in order to pay a tax bill, that lowers your account value, but it's best for you in the end.
We were saying that yesterday. Yeah. We were making a list of which clients really need to be considering Roth conversions, with the understanding that it was going to be more work for us, and they were probably going to pay the taxes out of their account. And it meant that our assets under management were going to go down. And some firms would never make that recommendation for that reason. Yeah. They're not going to suggest that, but that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do for you.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a couple minutes left here. Let's see, should we talk about 529s really quick before getting into a listener question?
Sure.
All right, Amanda, do you want to take 529s?
Yeah, I think there's a new provision that says you can roll over part of unused 529 funds into a Roth. We're all waiting to see the final rules on that, but right now it's the 529 has to be in existence for 15 years. And
Can you do a little pre-recommend, like what are you exactly saying? I think you're kind of jumped in the middle of your thought. Like a 529 plan is this, and this is why we care.
Oh yeah, the 529 is the college savings plan. And a lot of times people are hesitant to put money in a 529 because they think, oh, well, I don't know, what if my child doesn't go to college? What if there's extra money in there? I don't want to over contribute. So I think this gives a release valve if that happens to you, and it takes away some of that, that hesitation that people have to put money in a 529. And in general, a 529 is a really great vehicle to use. It's a tax advantaged account that helps you get to pay for your child's college. And so I just think that's a great provision. And because of the 15-year period you have to wait to do the withdrawal or conversion to a Roth, we would say if you haven't started a 529 for your child right now, it's a great time to start that 15-year tolling. If money is tight, put $100 in it, or what, every state has maybe a different minimum, so you would have to check the actual dollar amount there, but just getting it started, it's a great time.
Right. It doesn't mean you have to be putting money in. You're like, I can't do this right now, but you might as well start it. Just like with Roth IRAs, we tell people just start it because there's a 5-year tolling period on Roth IRAs. And I think it's a great thing. Like if you've saved money for your kid, or other relatives have given you money to save money for your child for college, and your child gets an amazing scholarship, and you're like, well, it's not fair. I saved all this money for them and they did a great job helping pay for their college. Now you can roll it into a Roth IRA for them, and they have a kickstart on their retirement savings, which is, I think that is one of the best things they have in this law, aside from just increases in Roth IRA and IRA conversion contributions.
Yeah, that's a real gift you can give your child, right?
We have an extra
and welcome Babette.
Yeah, if you're not watching this podcast,
the cat
has joined.
He's hanging out with
the chat.
us.
Okay, so wrapping up, let's go to our listener question for this week. And so if you've been reading in the news, I mean, it's all over the headlines, but maybe you haven't really delved into this, and to be honest, neither have we, but here's a few things we have to say about this. The question is, should I worry about the debt ceiling, or like, how does it affect me? Who wants to start with that?
Well, there was a really good article in the New York Times this morning, and we thought about putting a link on our website or putting it on our social media so you can read about it. I think ultimately, like Amanda said, it's not something we can control. It's just something that Congress fights over, and it's become something that happens every couple of years, or every 2-3 times a year sometimes. But ultimately, we said, well, how does this really impact our clients? Like, we could explain it all day long, but who cares? What does it mean? And we just said, well, it means that we have more debt in the country, and we're going to find ways of passing that on to taxpayers. I'll let Amanda take it from there.
Yeah, I think, right now we have historically low tax rates, and eventually, right, the chickens are going to come home to roost, and the tax rates can't stay that low for forever. So, it's a great time to take advantage of some tax strategies like Roth conversions, if that's appropriate for your situation. There's different things you can do to anticipate like an increase in a tax rate in the future. I think that we're talking about the income tax rate, but there's other ways Congress is finding to tax people, and that a big one, as we've seen in Secure Act 1.0 and now 2.0 that was just passed at the end of 2022, is that they're finding new ways to tax your 401ks and IRAs. And a lot of people just don't have that on their radar until
it's too late.
Until they're retiring, and they have a giant tax bill, and they're like not working anymore, and how do I pay this tax bill? Oh, do I have to go back to work? People find themselves in those kinds of situations, and it's preventable.
That's a good point. And I also want to continue back to when we talk about young people savings, and the important point here is, even if you make mistakes or your advisor makes mistakes on what you're buying, compounding is so incredibly important. And Amanda did a really good blog post, I think, some years ago. Maybe we need to relink that into from our website and just remind people how incredibly important compounding is. And so if you're waiting until, under the new Secure Act 2.0, you're waiting until you're 61 or 62 to do that increased catch up. Well, it's nice and all, but you're not going to get as much out of it had you done it in your 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
It's just simply going to be so much more money if you start it younger.
I just want to say really quick, one more thing is that you referenced a New York Times article this morning about the debt ceiling, and there's another one with a headline called "In Their 20s, Struggling to Save and Tired of Being Lectured About It." And I get it, but like they're quoting people saying, well, everybody's telling you to do this because that's what they did. And let me tell you, the people are telling you to do this because that's what they didn't do.
That's a really good point.
So if you're in your 20s, we get that it's hard.
I did, but I worked for a financial advisory firm when I was in my 20s.
Danielle.
Yeah, and I often think, like, what would I have done if I hadn't gotten a job with a financial advisory firm when I was a kid? My parents didn't know that stuff when I was young. They didn't teach me about that.
Yeah, so.
Oh yeah.
Hey, Chicago hat.
Yeah.
Back to your roots.
In Chicago, I hope my accent really came out in that episode recording.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Danielle.
Of course.
We appreciate all your insight, and I think this is a really good one. We'll get this one out soon, and we'll link everything at connectingthedollars.com. You can find us there with all the links to our social media and all the things we mentioned today. So yeah, thank you. See you next time.
Okay, bye.
That will do it for this episode of Connecting the Dollars. Nothing discussed in this episode should be considered legal, financial, or tax advice. If you like what you heard, please subscribe for more at Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your content. When you do, please give us a rating and a review. To see the links we mentioned in our show, along with other great Propel Financial Advisors content, go to connectingthedollars.com. You can find our past episodes there and subscribe to our newsletter. And if you're still here because you have a general question, you can email us directly at info@connectingthedollars.com. Or, if you're interested in working with us, click the Schedule a Consultation button on our website. Thank you for listening.